Getting the recording going. There we go. Right. So we are on, I think it's lesson 5 this week. So don't forget next week's half term. We've just been talking about that. So don't forget next week's half term. And so we won't have a class next week, but we'll be back the week after. So far we've been looking at lots of mark making and a few different artists, which I'll remind you of in a few seconds. We've been using charcoals, perhaps a little bit of white chalk and things as well to explore the mark making. So we've been getting very black and messy hands doing all these things. But now I'm hoping to give you this week to finish off if you need that. Some of you don't and have already moved on to the next thing, which is fantastic. So we're going to move into acrylic painting, and you'll have seen on the student drive that I put quite a few different examples of artworks for you to work from. So the idea will be that we study an artwork that shows a city scene, again, with lots of people and the perspective as well. But also we're going to have a look at atmospheric perspective as well, which is there's a few different elements or parts to this, which if you recognize them, will help you when you come to doing your own paintings and things later on. And some of the artworks that I've shared with you will have or do have an atmosphere in them, which suggests this use of space and distance in it as well. So we'll have a look at all of those things now. And the idea today, though, will be to draw out a picture of one of these artworks that you've selected. And then if you're ready, of course, start painting straight away, and we'll see how far we get with it and things. And I'll give help to those people who are on that already. But the next lesson, I'll be focusing a bit more intently on the painting aspect and sharing some techniques and things with you as well. Okay, so we'll go over to the other room wall thing. Okay, so this is one of the pictures, but I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. So first of all, this is just a reminder really of where we were last week. So you'll remember me choosing this rather interesting double exposure. So there's two pictures kind of exposed and moved on top of each other to create something that's already kind of abstract. And then I developed that into a drawing. So this picture here was just one that I got less than halfway through, and then I built it up quite a lot after that, and you'll remember me doing that in the video. So the mark making itself helps you to get a sense of the linear perspective, and the linear perspective is the lines that lead into the distance and give you that sense of space, which of course is more obvious in a city, but in a landscape or a different environment, there's other ways that you can show perspective or that sense of space and distance, which I'm hoping we can start to have a look at next. So I'll take those down and put up these. So these were some of the pictures that we've been looking at. So the top one is David Creffield, and I saw some really nice interpretations of these artworks from everybody in the last few weeks, and Leon Kosov at the bottom here as well. So building up layers of marks, allowing yourself a bit more freedom and removing marks, replacing them, correcting things, maybe being a bit more expressive. You can see from Leon Kosov's at the bottom that the lines are kind of, at the bottom the lines are all kind of moving about, and the perspective has been warped and distorted, but we've got something quite expressive. So that was sort of what I was doing with my drawing last week as well. And then Leslie Oldacre is this artwork that I've got up on here now. So there's less of the linear perspective. There is some up on the top left-hand corner. You can see there's like a bit of a line going towards a vanishing point. And on the other side as well, on the right-hand side at the top, there's a line going towards the vanishing point as well. And then, of course, we've got people close up a little bit more detailed, and then as we go towards the back, both the colours and the tones fade. So we've got a different way of interpreting the perspective, as well as some of the linear perspective in there as well. All right, so I'll just go through a few of the ideas that we've got here. This is some of the work this is a photograph of some of the pictures that I supplied, or one of the pictures I supplied. And it's quite good again, because it's got the linear perspective. You can see the train going off into the distance, the line of the buildings. And then we've got these long shadows, but also where there's mist and fog and things are fading as they go back into the background. So that again is both linear in the lines of the trains, and it's also atmospheric perspective, drawing us towards the background of the picture as well. Okay, so if we go on and have a look at another picture, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a few different artworks very briefly, just to give us a little bit more flavour of what I'm talking about. So now I got this word wrong earlier, but it's ethereal. So I read that Leonardo da Vinci's paintings, often the backgrounds have this ethereal quality to them. In other words, they're very faded. There's not as much detail, and it's almost kind of dreamlike and things. And then we've got lots of detail and darker shadows in the foreground on Mona Lisa herself. So again, we're looking at more detail in the foreground and faded ideas towards the back to show a sense of space and distance. And obviously we've got things getting smaller as they go away from us as well. Now we've got a little bit about clarity and detail again. So in the foreground of this picture by Monet, we've got the water lilies are very detailed and very clear, but as we go into the background, we've got more faded detail or less detail towards the back. So this is something you can use when working on your pictures. So the other thing to note is that things are darker as well. So the value of the picture changes as well. So we've got high value towards the back, faded colour, if you like, and at the front, or tints, and then at the front we've got more heavier, darker shadows, and that helps to draw you through the picture and create this sense of perspective. Okay, and the next one is another Monet picture using very strong and vivid colour, but also using some texture on there as well. So we've got the grassy texture has been created with these vivid, bold colours in the foreground, and then we've got more cooler colours towards the back. There are reds and things in there, but there's also blues and things mingled in. And if you look at the trees towards the right hand side, you'll see how much stronger the reds are on this side. So not only have we got texture creating a sense of space and distance, but we've also got colour as well as texture. So we've got these strong greens in the foregrounds, then the opposite colour has been used mixed in with the blues towards the back, and there's less detail towards there as well. Even though it's still quite detailed, it's not as detailed perhaps as the front area. So we've got colour, texture, clarity in the picture, creating a sense of perspective. So, and another one here, so a very different picture. This is more about the value, so value being dark to light. So the artist here, and I don't know the name of this artist, the artist here though has used really deep shadows in the foreground, and then as we go towards the background of the linear perspective, you can see how the details are very indistinct again, but also much higher in value, much lighter. So,
Amy, is that
yes.
a photograph?
No, I'll tell you what, I did think that when I first saw it, but it is actually a painting. I'll zoom in a bit, shall I, so you can have a closer look. There. Can you see? It's a bit more you can see it a bit better. But the effect of the light is fantastic, isn't it? Really works well. But yeah, when I first glanced at it, I thought, oh, is that a photo or not? But it is actually a really nice painting of a street somewhere. Okay.
Looks like Jack Vitriani does urban landscape.
Yeah, yeah, because it's really, I mean, his paintings are really atmospheric, aren't they? So yeah, it works brilliantly. Okay, so and now I've got another one which illustrates it a little bit more clearly. So this is obviously more of an illustration. It's really broken down the tones and shadows, so really dark in the foreground and getting lighter in the background. And you will have seen plenty of pictures that illustrate this in that way. And then I've got another one just here as well. I think there's another one between that actually. No, that's it. So the final picture I've got here that I wanted to share with you is this landscape, which I thought illustrated everything we've been doing, but everything I've just talked about as well. So again, in the foreground, lots of detail, lots of dark shadows. And then as we look right into the background there, we've got the very pale. And you can see actually, it's quite interesting how the artist is almost very loose brush strokes back over the buildings themselves, really pushes it back into the background. And in the foreground, we've got, you can see the strap of the man around the man's waist or shoulder there, the umbrellas, the details of the car. But as we go further back into the background, the artist has not put in quite as much of that detail. So the lighting in the shop window there. The other thing that's interesting, of course, is the colour. So we have got some warm colours in the foreground here, and then the orange lights, and the opposite of orange on our colour wheel would be a blue. So it helps to contrast those areas and draw your attention to particular spots in the picture at the same time. So the idea of the next pieces of work we're going to be doing is exploring the atmospheric perspective as well as the linear perspective, which we've been looking at. So the linear perspective being the lines which lead us to those vanishing points that we've been exploring. Okay, so I'll go over to my desk now. So up here, I've chosen a picture that I'm going to be working from today. And I'm going to do a straight pencil drawing with shading of this, with the view to making a copy of it onto some art paper later and painting back over the top. So if you started to draw out your picture and you've got all the outlines, a nice thing might be next is to explore the tonal values of the picture. So where it's going light, where it's dark. This will give you a bit more knowledge about the picture that you're looking at before we then start to paint over the picture. So if you didn't want to photocopy or you can't photocopy your work, the thing might be to actually take a tracing of your drawing a bit later on so you can start painting it. All right, but I'm going to, my idea today was to explore the tonal values to create the atmospheric perspective that we're talking about. So I'm hoping that my drawing will be something more along the lines of this. And I'm going to use pencil to do it. If you're really into the charcoals, you could use the charcoals as well. I know some of you love charcoals. So you could work that way if you wanted to. All right. So to get started, you're going to need a printout of your chosen picture. So this is my printout. Now I'm going to just explain how you can enlarge the picture. Now I know that quite a few of you will have seen me doing this before, but you take your picture, you cut it out so there's no white borders. So obviously you're going to need a pair of scissors if you've got borders on your picture. Put your dot on the corner, each corner of the photo, like that. So there's my dots, and that just represents the original size of your picture. Then you need a vertical line and a horizontal line. The easiest way to get that straight is just to draw through the lines and extend them beyond it. Okay, do the same on the other side. I'm going to do that now. Okay, and then the next bit actually helps you keep the proportions. So my little dot over here, I'm going to draw a very pale diagonal line through there. So don't worry if you're thinking, oh gosh, I can't remember that. I'll show everybody again. So draw a line all the way through. So now I've got a diagonal line and I've got the two sides. So this is the point where the picture matches. I'd like to make my picture almost fit the size of this page. So I'm going to make another dot on the diagonal line over here. Take the picture away and then do a horizontal line across the top like that, and another one going straight down. You can measure it if you want to. I tend to just sort of use my eye like that. So now I've got my picture enlarged. Okay, now you can divide it up even more. So the easiest way to do that on the paper is literally just fold it into 4. To find the middle of this, the big one, without actually doing any measuring at all you've got to do, he says, is draw a diagonal line. My ruler's not going to be long enough for this, but I'm going to draw a line through the middle like that, and this point is the center. So to get across through there, go that way and that way. So when I folded my paper a second ago, my photo, I folded it into quarters by doing that, and here I've just used the center point to get the center of this. Okay, and you can do this exactly the same thing again with every other square you've got. So I'll do one here, show you that. So there's the center point of that one, and I can do exactly the same thing. So you can divide it up into more squares. Okay, so the thing to do on your picture is to actually draw in the fold, and then you can divide this space up. We're using a grid to help us accurately find the shapes in the picture before we actually start to use shading and so forth. And then later on, when I've drawn this out, I can start painting. If you're ready to paint, then the thing to do is look at your photo and decide on a background color before you start working. So on this one, you can see there's lots of blue running throughout most of this picture. So I will put a layer of blue acrylic down with a flat brush when I get to that stage later on. Okay, and then we can start adding highlights and shadows and working in with a little bit of colour as well. Right, so that's where we're going at the moment. So we've worked a lot with mark making and drawing and black and white and things. So I'm really keen to get into the painting now. So I hope everyone's ready for that. But if you're not, keep going with your charcoal and things, and keep asking me for help. I've got all my stuff here, so I can show you a few things if you need me to. All right, is everybody happy with that? Thumbs up! Woohoo! Okay, so you can see from this that I'm basically using a grid or some diamond shapes as well to draw out the whole of the picture. And this really helps to break down all the shapes The diagonal lines in the grid also divides the space in a different way, so that you can actually work out where shapes start and finish in kind of a different way, which I don't know how to describe it, but the diagonals sort of reach through the square, the main square that we've got there, and splits the shapes, vertical shapes going down and the horizontal ones, and helps you find the meeting point of those within the squares a little bit better. And you'll understand a little bit of what I mean by that if you try it out for yourself. You can see on the grid, as I explained a few minutes ago, that I folded it into quarters. I found the quarters on the drawing, and then I put the diagonal cross through each quarter to help me find that, and I did the same on the bigger one, which is the drawing you can see. So it's dividing up the space in a way that helps you to break down and identify all of those shapes that we're now looking at. And I've slowed it down a little bit today so you can see the speed at which I work generally on creating those shapes which go into the picture. The important thing to remember, of course, is to compare each of those images, or each of those shapes or the shapes that you're looking at with each other, looking both at the background shapes or the negative shapes against the positive shape. So in this case, it'd be the figures against the darker figures against the paler background. So in this picture, and from the little black and white version up in the corner, you can see how the artist has used the darker tones for the things that are much closer to us. And then as we look further back in the picture, there are some darker areas, but towards the back of the street there, you can see how things get much more faded. Later on, you'll see me shading this, and I started to notice actually how there are the highlights which are hitting the top of the figures' heads actually really helps to get this sense of light. So we've got a bit of contrast going on in the picture as well, which is really helpful for creating this sense of the light. And I suspect it's a sort of early evening picture or early morning picture that we've got here and that we're working from. So as I mentioned before, the nice thing about working from another artist is because you can pick up some skills and ideas about particularly technical things with light and shadow in this case. You can pick those things up and you get more of an understanding about how those effects work. And it's immensely satisfying to be able to draw something like this and kind of replicate the effects that the artist has successfully achieved. So here you can see that I've now drawn out all of the main shapes. There will be other little bits of shapes and things in there that I haven't yet captured, but I will add to. So that what I mean by that is that in, say, the man's jacket in the foreground, there might be extra details that are not as obvious or as clear. And the other interesting thing, if you look at the colour version, you can see the chap's jacket is actually in a nice red, whereas in the black and white image it looks just as black and white as the rest of the picture, which is an interesting thing when it comes to the adding the shading in here. So as I go through all of the shading on here, I do spend a bit of time refining the shapes as well. So where I've not quite got things accurate, I can make alterations in here.
And as you're working on it, you'll probably notice things that you didn't notice before and need to make changes. And basically, you're learning about what's in front of you. And as you learn about it, you learn how to apply those effects as well. So you can see there I've spotted the halo around the top of the man's head, just there too, which you can see in the black and white version and on the colour version. So moving on a little bit quicker now, I'm adding in, so obviously it looks quite harsh at this point, but what I found is that adding some of the mid-tones or lighter tones in the foreground here helps to soften down the contrast of the figures. So you can see that in between the man and there's another figure just in the background. Adding a slightly softer shadow allows the picture to kind of join and meld together a little bit more as well. So I don't get much further than this with the drawing, but you can see how the effect is starting to work with the atmospheric perspective. We have got atmosphere with the highlights on the head and some of the shadows, of course. I didn't quite get as far into the background, but we shall be back next time where we can work into this a little bit more. But I'm looking forward to having a go with some of the acrylic paints over the top of part of this before moving on to doing a painting from a photograph. So anyway, I hope you've had an interesting watch, and I'll see you again in the next lesson. Thank you.